Okay. Okay. So hello, my name is Wayne. Today's video is called Saturn's Rings Proves a Young Saturn, but I'm going to talk to you about that. So now I know it is true that all of the Jovian planets have rings. You know, Jupiter, not just Saturn, but also Jupiter and Uranus and Neptune. So but I'm talking about Saturn's rings today. So now it is true that Saturn does get the rings from the moon, but Saturn is losing more rings than it's getting. So even a few million years from now, I don't believe Saturn will have his rings anymore. That's what I think, anyway. So. So today I'm gonna read an article about Saturn. I got 4 pictures of it. They're short-lived and young. Now, it might be about young, about 7,000 years old. I know it is not really old. It's not really young. It's old, and yeah, because 7,000 is a long time. I'll read it to you anyway. So here's the summary here. So creationists have argued that the rings of Saturn are less than 1 million years old, in spite of evolutionists' claims that the planet is 4.5 to 5 billion years old. The same as the solar system. The rings have made up of rock and ice fragments and being drawn closer and closer to Saturn's surface by the planet's gravitational pull. Astronomers have believed that Saturn's rings have been formed when the moon or comet, about 200 kilometers, had been struck by impact close on the planet by leaving debris. But this impact, it had suggested happened no more than 100 million years ago. And this was in 1852. Okay, it was in 1852 when Otto Struve in the Marbles of the St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences, they have been changes of the rings progressively decrease, and then the gap between the planet of the inner edge B. Relatively with young old drawings and descriptions used to evaluate this ratio. Okay, Huygens is 1657, Huygens and Cassani 1695. Bradley 1719, and Horsgel 1799, and W. Struve 1826, results indicating a rapid approach of the inner edges of the rings towards Saturn, while the outer edge of the outermost ring A had changed little. The international team of scientists of French, US, and Canadian using the Hubble Space Telescope, we're showing the improved rings. They show the improved rings as losing water relatively rapidly, and the water is spinning so fast. The team believes that it would have been gone already if the rings were more than about 30 million years old. News of the rings didn't come as a surprise to the scientific community. Astronomers had suspected that the ring of microscopic meteorites have pits of every body in the solar system was rapidly eroding the rings. They already had the indirect evidence that the ring debris is falling into the planet. The first direct evidence in fall astronomers see how fast the rings are eroding and planets of debris, like beds of Saturn's rings. By the extension, the less showy rings of the other giant planets. So the rings are falling into the planet. Well, then I guess this is evidence that Saturn is also eating its rings and staining with the other Jovian planets of our solar system. But let's keep reading. Thus, astronomers now believe that the water evaporates from the particles that make up the rings when micrometeorites crash into them, but the fate of the water molecules depends upon change distance from the planet. Neutral molecules fall back onto the ring's surface, but change ionized particles spiral along magnetic field lines. Beyond the outer edge of the inner ring, the field lines carry away from the planet. But the lower altitudes of field lines guide down to Saturn. This was also the first evidence of nuclear water precipitation, of flux of the rings of Saturn onto its atmosphere. Determining just how fast ring water streaming into Saturn, thus how long the rings have been around, would take more work and some calculations how fast the water is being removed from the stratosphere. A high flux would direct more evidence that Saturn's rings are short-lived, and if Saturn's particular rings are very young and short-lived, it's only by luck, and then they say they are around for us as human beings to marvel at. Furthermore, the catastrophic event needed to make rings as massive as these, sharing of the small moon by a comet, or destruction by a passing giant comet by Saturn's gravity, it's only likely to happen just once in the planet's lifetime, by say the scientists. Okay, now realizing the dazzling of rings of Saturn could be a rare sight does not bother us. The evidence is increasingly mounting that the Genesis flood was accompanied by the catastrophic throughout the solar system, for example, impact crating. And thus we have expected Saturn's rings to be very young. So it isn't by luck that we are here to see them, since they are but technical reminder that God's judgment of His creation. Well, that is true, and the answer is, here's my answer for you. I don't believe in luck. There's no such thing as luck. But anyway, now we're going to another article called Young Saturn. Let's read this one, okay? So I'm bored to learn more about Saturn, to learn about this planet called Saturn. So this is symphonic suite of the planets Gustav was titled The Fifth Movement. Saturn, bringer of old age, in human terms, a few thousand years will be pretty old, but sacred scientists claim that the planet is much older, about 4.5 billion years. Cassini, the spacecraft, have been orbiting Saturn since 2004. It's making the age hard to believe. The dependent lines, the evidence, argue for a much younger age. Cassini, Huygens have been advanced. Our planet spacecraft have been launched. In 14 years, I worked on a mission. Opportunity have to hear firsthand the struggles of meeting the planet. Scientists were have been keeping the Saturn old. I have heard the predictions before launch. I've monitored it's views to become Saturn as rings have a sort of strong upper limits in age order solar system. Let me get my hat, guys. Okay. I want to get my hat on to show you. Anyway, this is my Houston hat. Anyway. Now let's keep reading. Okay. Enceladus. It was reported in June 2009 issue of this magazine. Enceladus emerged in 2005. A serious challenge, old claims. This little moon about the diameter of Arizona was erupting water ice, dust and gas of itself pulling powerful geysers. In March 2011, the problem got more difficult for long agers, and he emitted from Enceladus was measured at 15.8 gigawatts, 10 times higher than earlier estimates. Papers in 2007 and 2008 admitted there is no known combination of factors that can keep activity going for billions of years. The eruptions on Enceladus are indeed fountains of youth. Okay, main rings. Saturn's rings are not past its smooth race as they appear to be. They are dynamic. The rings constantly being bombarded by the solar wind, sunlight pressure, gas drag, and internal collisions, and micrometeorites. Scientists have ever heard that these ring tones, radio frequencies, from the meteorite impacts, and the visible spokes of the made their signatures. Yet the ice is remarkably clean compared to the predicted continuation from billions of years of micrometeorite pollution. The scientists have been found the trail of a billion-ton comet that must have hit the rings in the 1980s. How rare was that? Scientists have struggled to keep the rings open, suggesting that the ice got recycled somehow, or the rings got more massive than they appear. This only prolonged the life of the B ring and the distant one. Most ring scientists, however, have resigned the fact that the rings look young, but maintain their faith of billions of years supposes that the rings formed long after Saturn by a lucky accident. This is a further explanation require highly plausible conditions. Now, the fate rings. In addition of the visible ring, Saturn has one to his F ring continued up by the previous one study of moons too, some fragile arcs in the G ring, and now newly discovered Phoebe ring, orbiting Saturn backwards, and 4, the tenuous E ring is created by 10% of particles that escape Enceladus to approach Saturn. The explosion in the E ring was detected by probably from Enceladus, displaying as much mass as rings micron-sized particles combined in just 4 months. And how often this occurred, if not rare, it represents a dynamic destructive process. None of these delicate rings seem likely to persist for even a tiny fraction of the lifetime of the main rings. These main rings look young. Now, Saturn has incredibly strong lightning storms over the verminal vortex itself pull that could almost swallow Earth. The bizarre hexagon-shaped pattern of clouds at the North Pole, Saturn's magnetic field, furthermore, defies evolutionary dynamo theories by aligning the area perfectly on the spin axis. The magnetic sphere has also been found unloaded by charged particles from the Enceladus geysers, which in turn affects from field's rotation. It's remarkable that such a tiny moon has produced a measurable effect on a planet with 5 million tons more mass. Now talk about tail wagging the dog. Iapetus. The Texas-sized moon, Iapetus, is a black as charcoal and its leading hemisphere as white as snow and its trailing side. The difference between the brightness, albedo, and the note of the discoverer Jane Dominique Cassani in 1672. The Voyager scientists that made mystify 1981. The mystery of was finally solved by the Cassini mission, but with a solution. But close encounter photos was taken in 2007 showed the dark material almost certainly came from outside the moon, but even more astonishing was a runaway migration of carbon dioxide isotoped by the heat absorbed by the dark material around it. This irreversible process causes the carbon dioxide dry ice substitute of the hop to the trailing side from pole to pole. About 12% of migrating ice of the largest space each 29.5 year Saturnian orbit. Even if Iapetus started at a 5 kilometer, 3 miles thick, it would have been gone in just a third if it assumed a 4.5 billion age of the solar system. Another puzzle on Iapetus is a mountain range circling most the equator that rises at some points 19 kilometers or 12 miles above the surrounding plains. Trying to explain that in evolutionary terms requires improbably rapid spin down of Iapetus, or maybe a ring collapse. Rhea, a similar sized moon, shows scares of its equator that might be from ring collapse, but nothing as massive as the mountains on Iapetus. Now, the Titan atmosphere. Like Earth, Saturn's moon Titan has a largely nitrogen atmosphere, but unlike Earth, it has a component of methane, we call natural gas on Earth. This methane provides Titan a space blanket that keeps nitrogen in a gaseous form. But the methane, the Titan atmosphere, is irreversibly lost to space and to the surface. Since Voyager atmospheric scientists have known the solar wind is eroding the methane, converting into hazels and other compounds that cannot change back into methane. When that erosion depletes the methane to a critical level, the entire nitrogen atmosphere should freeze and collapse onto the surface catastropically. Clearly that this has not happened. Atmospheric scientists have given time and methane an upper age limit to 10 million years. Okay, now Titan's surface. The solar wind ionosis of atmospheric methane causing and to recombine onto other hydrocarbons. Primary ethane, C2H6, the ethane, which is liquid at the time of the temperatures, should have been degraded of over 4.5 billion years of the global ocean of several kilometers thick. Well, according to the calculations made in the 1980s, the Hydrogen's probe, however, landed in January 2005. Of a third of the moist lake bed of the asteroid landed provided the ground truth of the old age predictions were wrong. The Project Orbiter, the landed found Titan girded of the dunes of dirty ice particles that rid it of the river channels, but only half a dozen craters. Astonishing for a large moon, lakes were found in the north and south polar regions. But the largest one in the south were recently caught evaporating quickly, now that Saturn is moving from equinox to solstice. The cloudburst to methane, which is the last year, show weather cycles that has not left evidence of billions of years of hydrocarbon deposits. Now these and other accidents put the strong other limits of the HR system. Many of the top at 100 million years, 10 million years or less. Does not mean that Saturn is that old. It could be much younger, including the biblical time scale of thousands of years. To illustrate the problem for evolutionists, sometimes at a presentation, I have an assist to help me stretch out at a 45-foot rope in front of the audience. If the 45 rope, the 4.5 billion year age of the system, 100 billion years, is just 1 foot of the rope. Where was the other 40 feet? Where went the other 44 feet on the timeline? Did it even exist? I guess not. But let's keep reading. Bible believers cannot prove the evidence that Saturn fits within the Genesis time frame, but consider falsifying the 4.5 billion year age of the effects of simultaneously falsifying Darwinian evolution in the geological time scale, and with the comes of the whole new set of questions. Questions have been addressed by the precision of the intelligent design and by answered by the world, the Creator Himself. So this article is telling us that these two articles, that these things about Saturn, it proves that Saturn's only about 7,000 years old, and not billions. So now I'm going to show you how to get saved according to the Bible. And before I go, anyway, so point of evolution is a damn souls to hell, and also the point of the flat Earth theory is a damn souls to hell as well. And when you go to heaven is to believe on our Lord Jesus Christ. Salvation is by faith alone, and based on Jesus Christ alone. And once you're saved, by easy is the truth. You can't lose your salvation. Once you and when easy is that salvation is easy. Okay, just believe on Jesus Christ for salvation. And also the next video is what is about to say about Uranus, and I'll talk about that next video. Because we're gonna go right now. So thank you for watching this video and rejoice. Bye.